Hello and welcome to the ServiceNow Learning Plan walkthrough for the Studio module. First, a little bit of preamble. My name is Dave Slusher. I'm a developer evangelist with the Platform Business Unit at ServiceNow. Feel free to reach out to me via email, via Twitter, however you can reach out. The intention of this video that I'm going to do is to walk through basically the module of the learning plan covering the Studio. This is part of a series of these walkthroughs that are not intended to take the place of working the learning plan. We strongly encourage anyone trying to learn the ServiceNow platform and development on the ServiceNow platform to start at the beginning of learning plans appropriate to them and carry forward. But if you get to a point where you need a little encouragement, you've got some kind of impediment that you need help getting over, these walkthroughs are intended to just give you a little bit of a companionship as if we were there with you. And the style will be close to as if we were doing a real-time webinar and you were watching it. So there are almost guaranteed to be some flubs and false starts, but we will carry on through them, and we're not holding ourselves to a highly edited version of this. So with that said, let us begin. As you see here, I've got two browser windows here. The left side is the developer portal at developer.servicenow.com, and the right side is my developer instance. So you'll see this on the home page, but also if you go into the navigation bar, there is a learning plan section. And so if you do the learning plans down here, and I'll just go to that section as if we were doing this. In the new to ServiceNow, and that's where we're going to cover this, is there are a number of sections. ServiceNow Basics, ServiceNow Studio is the one that we're going to be covering today. So you would click Resume, and now we're at the beginning of the ServiceNow Studio objectives. It actually had remembered the last one that I had looked at, so it had returned me to there. But this is what you will see. Now, I'm also not going to cover every single one of these informational pages. We're mostly going to work through the exercises. I will just very briefly cover these pages to get some of the concepts that you might need as you're watching this. So starting with the ServiceNow Studio objectives, the whole idea of using this learning plan is that by the time you're done with it, you should understand how to use our Studio product, which is basically like an IDE-like experience. You'll see that very shortly. You should be able to create a scoped application. You should be able to add files to it, create tables, configure tables, and then design forms. And ServiceNow is one of these systems where by defining the data model, you actually get a certain amount of the user interface for free. So we're also going to, in order to have a demonstration of that, we're going to build the sample application. That is what this learning plan is about. And it's just an application to take suggestions for innovations. So the idea is you want to be able to you want your users to be able to submit innovations. The administrator has to be able to determine what the state of it is from looking at the record, and they have to be able to filter records. And so here's the data model. It's got these 7 fields. A unique identifier, timestamps, what type it is, et cetera, et cetera. And we will again get to that. And the ServiceNow Studio IDE is what we're going to be looking at. It is basically the tool that that we're going to be covering pretty heavily. It's what you use to create applications. It's what you use to create the files, the tables, etc. All the stuff that goes into a scoped application. All right. And so when you create an application, you're basically using Studio, and you're creating either from scratch, from custom application, or from service. Are various ways you can initiate this. In terms of our developer program, almost everything we ever do is starting from scratch because you want to have that maximal control. But you do have other options if you want to do that. And so let us just get directly to walking through the exercise. And so I'm going to try to do this side-by-side thing so that we can both see the exercise and see what's happening at the same time. So step 1 of working this exercise is to launch Studio. And you must spell it correctly or it will not be visible. So in ServiceNow, you use this filter over here in the navigator to find anything that you want to find. And it launched Studio. It unfortunately launched Studio in another tab. So let me bring it back over here. And I'm basically replacing that other tab with Studio because that's mostly what we're going to work with. So you'll see that you have the Create Application choice here. That's where we want to start. Create Application. We want to start from scratch, as I mentioned before. And now, at this point, this is where you're asked to name the application. And we're going to name it Innovate. And a little bit about scoping. Scoping is a mechanism to create globally unique namespaces. And so when we talk about scoped applications, that basically means something with a namespace unique to you. Because I'm using a personal developer instance from the developer program, they come built in with their own scope prefix. So the scope prefix, this part is unique to me. This part is derived from the name of the application. And when I go create, it will actually go out to the system and make sure that this is globally unique. If it is not, like if I have used this before, it will give me an error and I will need to create a new different scope. Part of this is this global uniqueness is so that you can sell applications in the store. And so that you can have a guarantee that if you have this scope, it is this and only this thing, and you don't collide with anything that has ever existed. Because part of the idea is that you might put this on any given ServiceNow instance. Okay, so that's the super quick tutorial on what a scope is. So we're going to go ahead and create the application by clicking the Create button. Am I sure? Yes, I am sure, as a matter of fact. So Innovate has been created. We're going to hit the back to list. I've got these kind of blown up pretty big, so it's chopping a little bit. And at this point, you see that before I had no list whatsoever. Now I do actually have a list of applications, and Innovate is one of those. I'm going to click this to now open this in my Studio IDE. And when we do that, we see that we had that. Now we are opened. We are in Studio, and that is that exercise. So at that point, we're going to move forward. And so in the getting around in Studio, it's just going to give you a little bit of information about how to navigate inside of the Studio application. And so you see it's talking about the Application Explorer, the Content Frame, the status bar. So this is the header up here. This is the Application Explorer. Right now, there is nothing in there. We will be creating application files very shortly. This is the content frame, and we'll see more about that when we start opening files. And then down here is the status bar, and you'll see that this is the Innovate application, version 1.00. We have 0 files, 0 unsaved. And right now, we're not linked to source control. If we were, we would see a different icon down here. So now we're going to add a file. And in fact, we're just going to skip this because we'll actually go directly to it. But you see up here this icon that says, this button that says Create Application File. That's what we're going to do. And in ServiceNow development parlance, basically everything is a file. So when we create a table, that will also be a file, right? It's not file as in file system type thing. It's not a thing that would be like a text file on a system or a code file. It really just means anything about which we have metadata in the system. And so a table is a thing in ServiceNow. All these things are basically equivalent, right? They're entries in metadata. So we're going to create a new table. So we're here. We're going to examine the left-hand pane. Is there anything there? There's not anything because we haven't created anything. We're going to create a table. So you start by clicking this Create Application File, and you'll see that there's a bunch of options in here. The very first thing, because it makes sense, ServiceNow being kind of a data-driven system, you're almost always going to start with the table, right? There's very little you can do until you have some tables to work on. So we're going to create this table, at which point we're going to get the empty new table form. We're going to come down here, and we're going to give it some of the values that they suggest. So the label is Innovate. The name gets populated, and you'll notice that this is the Innovate table. This is the Innovate scope prefix. So this is the application. This is the table. If we created something different, if we just called it foo, then it would get auto-populated with something different, right? So don't get confused between the two Innovates. This is auto-population that's happening there. Extend table, we're not actually extending a table in this particular case. Create module, we want that to happen. We're going to show you what that means in a minute. Create mobile module, we want to do that as well. And then add module to menu, we want it to create a new menu. A new menu name is automatically selected. You could change it if you wanted to. So so we're going to do that, and then we're going to come down here to the controls section and use these values. So what we want down here is to have auto number selected, and the prefix INO is what we want to use. The automatically suggested prefix was INN. We're going to add an O to it, and we're just going to change this. And the number of digits is 6. And really, the main reason that we're doing this here is just to show that these are available to be changed. Quite often, you'll use the default ones, but you can do what you want. We're going to use this with the pre-populated value, which is it's going to get the user role that's going to control this table is the innovate user. Then we're going to go over to the columns section and note down in here that at this point there are no columns, right? We have not, this is a table, it will be absolutely an empty table shell when we do this. We're going to click submit and submit the table. And now the table has been created. And you'll notice before when we were talking about the population of the Application Explorer, now there are things in here. There is a table. There are some roles that were created. There are access controls. There are navigation menus that we asked it to automatically create for us. So now we have a menu that holds some modules, et cetera, and all that was automatically created. And so the question it's asking is, why aren't those 7 tables that from the data model? Why aren't they in here? And why are these tables in there? And so to spoiler alert, to kind of answer the questions for you, is these are the ones that are automatically created by the system, and we need to add every other table that we want to exist. Okay, so it's a very rudimentary operation if you didn't add some fields to it, right? So these are kind of the boilerplate minima that you need to have for any table, right? So these automatically get created by the system. SysID is its unique identifier, that the ServiceNow system's unique identifier. And every table will have one of these no matter what. And these timestamps, very much like most systems that, have some kind of automatic data layer like this, have these built for you. Rails has similar things, et cetera, et cetera. So now what we're going to do is add our own fields to this table. And we're going to do it a couple different ways. You can add it directly down here. You can add it via the form designer. And so there's multiple ways to add fields in here. And I believe in this exercise we're about to see, I think we're going to see both ways. We're going to add, first we're going to create a form. And so like the same way you create anything, you start with the application file. And so this filter works much like the filter in the left-hand side of the main window. And we're being asked to create a form. Now they're asking us, for what table are we creating the form? And so what we're going to do is select the Innovate table, and we're going to say Create. Then what we're going to do when this opens is we're going to get the default form. So this is basically the kind of the untouched view of the form before we've done anything. And I'm going to actually minimize this to give us a little more screen real estate. Actually, I did the wrong thing. We want to do that. So we've done that. So now we're looking over here. We've got that going. We've got the default view, which really just has the auto-generated number. We're going to change this to a 2-column view. And we're going to add the created field to the form. We're going to drop it in the right side. And so there's a drag and drop editor, much like you would expect to do, to see in any kind of, dynamic form builder kind of things. We're going to add the updated field to the Innovate section, place it under the created. So updated, created, and updated. And you'll note that it can be either of these places. I'm going to try to drop it there. And if we, for some reason, drop it in the wrong spot, they can also be, with these drag handles, they can be moved around later. We're going to click Save at this point. Now, I didn't mention this at the time, but you will notice now that we actually have two tabs going on, and these tabs are living simultaneous, right? We have the table view, we also have the form. And so one of the nice things about the Studio IDE is that because of this tabbed view, prior to this, you used to have to navigate back and forth and lose your context a lot. And it is actually extremely nice to be able to have both of these things open at the same time and able to jump back and forth with just a little click of a tab. So now we're going to create a new section, and I actually have to drag this a little bit because I believe it's falling off the edge of the right side of the UI. There you go. And so we're going to create a new section. Minimize this a little bit so that we got everything on the same page. You'll notice that this actually re-rendered into a mobile view because I dropped it just far enough to do that. So we're going to create the new section. We're going to rename the section to have no title. And we're going to change this to a one-column layout. Then we're going to add a short description field to the new section. So you can add columns here by inserting new rows in there. You can also add them directly from the form designer. And so we're going to do that right here. We're going to go to the field types, and we want a string type. We're going to drag it over here. And then again, I need to get a little bit more real estate. There you go. You see the properties. Now at this point, we're operating on we're basically naming and doing all the metadata of this particular column in this table. So we're going to name it short description. And the name of it, we're also going to, this is like the physical name of the column. Right? The other is the semantic label that a person would see. I'll move this a little bit over there. No default maximum length is 125 characters. You can set that on a string, and we're going to make it mandatory. And now we can close that. If I can get that, there you go. There's a short description field. Click Save. And now at this point, those have been saved into that. And you'll notice this little blue dot up there. That's the indicator that a tab has unsaved changes. So if you actually try to close that tab while that blue dot's up there, you'll get a warning. So it's nice to have this thing looking out for you and not letting you blithely save your changes without close the tab without saving the changes. All right, we're going to add another section and another field. So let us go ahead and we're going to add that here. We're going to change the title to My Idea. We again want this to be a one-column layout. And we're going to add a description field using these parameters. So another string type. So we're going to grab string, drag it in there. And let us again label it, and the label is description. I'm going to do it this way actually, because I don't know why. I prefer to avoid two keystrokes with a lot more, but I did that. Type is string because we built it that way. Maximum length is 1,000, and again, this is mandatory. You can also say, you can also make this a read-only field. Mandatory means you'll see this if we look at the form, that the form cannot be submitted until that's entered. And you don't have to build that functionality. That's part of the ServiceNow interface that comes for free. So we're going to save this again. Then we're going to add the ideas type field. And we're going to select the choice list. And so we're going to drag this. It's going to take choice, and we're going to put it under here. And we're going to configure the choice field. And we're going to do that again with the gear icon here. And the label, idea, idea type, idea type. It's of type choice. Default process improvement. We're going to put that in here. Actually, I can't put the default in until I create some choices. So, which is exactly what it's telling me here, and I was not reading it. Okay, so we're going to come down here, and we're going to configure some of the choices. And so what you're going to see on the left-hand side here is the visible label. This is what you'll see in the drop-down. And the right side is actually the value that will be saved in the database. And we're just going to create that process improvement. Call it process. And then team building. Team. And now I'll go up here and change the default to be process improvement. This is essentially a reference to that thing, and it couldn't live until I created that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this again. And now you can see this is, in fact, the form. So we've got 3 sections. The innovate section, number created, updated, idea type. The unlabeled section with short description, and the my idea with a description. Okay. So now the next step here is to test the innovate form. So to do that, we're going to return to this other window here, and if I can get that on top of it here. And so this is kind of where we lose some students of the portal, is that they get a little confused over what we mean when we're going from Studio to the main interface. This is the main interface, so the place from which we invoke Studio. Now you'll notice if we tried to do innovate, it's not there. That's because what we're looking at here was actually this navigator down the left side existed from the initial page load. We've now added new stuff. So what we need to do is hit, on my Mac, Command R, but any kind of refresh. So refreshing the whole thing, and it will rebuild that navigator down the left side. I'm going to close the self-service, and you'll see now that actually innovate and innovates is the module. This is the application, and this is the module that we had it create before. So if we open this, you'll see a default list, and you'll notice it's got the number type, it's got the description, it's got the idea type, it's got short description. This is just the default. Notice we did 0 configuration. That's just how it exists originally. We're going to hit the new button, and this will open the form that we just created. And you'll notice here's the section, and I'm going to need to expand this a little bit to get the 2 columns, because I've got it basically in the mobile view because I had it shrunk. So you'll notice there's our number, there's our idea type, there's our created, our updated, and you'll notice too it's got the default that we asked it to have, and you'll notice this red asterisk. We had configured both of those things to be mandatory, and they are mandatory. So that basically is working correctly. So we feel good about that. So now we're going to return to the studio, and we're going to do one more thing here, which is we're going to create a view. So we're going to over here, we're going to click this arrow. We're going to create a new view, and we're going to call this advanced. So now we've got a new different view. We click the OK button. So the view is set to advanced. Right now, it is, as we're beginning, it's got the same look that we already had. We're now actually going to add some more stuff to it. So we're going to come back over here, and we want true false. And we're going to drop it in the innovate section under idea type. So hover over till you see that, and we're going to drop it right there. We're going to configure this field, and this is called idea implemented. And that's all we need to do there. So at this point, we're going to save. And then using, basically, this is now saying do whatever you want to do with the rest of this field. And, for just for purpose of showing something else happening, let's put, updated by, etc., just to show, I don't know, just to show something else happening in here. And let's save. Now we're going to test the advanced view by going back to our other window, and we're going to reload the form. Actually, it's saying to go back to this list. A list of all the... Oh, I forgot to create a record before. So let's go ahead and create a record. My test innovation. Test out the app. And I'm just going to leave all these things unpopulated. All right, so we're going to go look at the form for the thing I just created. Now, it opened in the default view. Okay, so now what we're going to do is click up here, and we're going to switch to the advanced view. And when we do that, we should see the view that we created before. And there we are with idea implemented. It's lacking the one section. It's got the activity for more formatter. It's got the updated by that I added. So now we've created the form. We've actually got two different views of the same form. And you can have multiple arbitrary views of your same record. You could have like an end user view and an admin view is an extremely common use case. But you'll notice a lot. This UI basically came out for free, right? We didn't do a lot to make this exist. We defined the data model, and then we did some basic layout, but most of that work was already done for us by the system simply by defining the data model. So with that walks you through the Studio section. And there are some questions. I would, again, urge everybody to actually do this for yourself, just if for no other reason than just the muscle memory, to get yourself used to doing these kinds of things, and to get yourself familiar with where things live, and then answer those questions for yourself. The goal here is to not short circuit your learning, but to augment your learning. So we want to just make it possible for people to get forward. Whether or not you're familiar with programming at all, whether or not you're familiar with the platform, we want to take you from wherever you are and get you feeling good with developing on ServiceNow, because it can be very productive, it can be very valuable, and it is fun. That's pretty much all I ever want to do my days, is spend my time developing ServiceNow applications. And I wish I was doing it now instead of recording this video, because it's so much fun. With that, again, my name is Dave Slusher. You can reach me by email or via Twitter if you so desire, or follow me on Twitter if you'd like to see more information that comes down about the developer program. And don't forget, if you're not already a member of it, developer.servicenow.com is where all this exists, and where you can get the learning plan, create your account, get your personal developer instance. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the future, and I hope that you develop something wonderful.